Welcome to the Power Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Alethea Felton, and this is where unstoppable resilience meets life-changing success. Get ready for powerful stories, bold insights, and real breakthroughs, because your power transformation starts now. I cannot begin to tell you all what an honor it is to have this guest on the Power Transformation Podcast. She is an incredible human being in my life, and I would like to welcome Tina Lifford. Welcome, Tina.
Hey there, Alicia, how are you?
I'm doing well. This is going to be a nice conversation
Mm,
because we already know each other. And I'm telling you, you all, if you don't know about Tina now, you will know after this interview because she is changing the face and the course of the world through the work that she does. And so let's just go ahead and first start with a fun, lighthearted icebreaker question. And
okay.
Tina, this is the question for you. Suppose you had a day where
Mhm.
you had no appointments, no schedules, no Zooms, calls, or anything. What would the perfect ideal day look like for you?
Wow. Um, it's gonna sound crazy, but I live a lot of ideal days because I like to just contemplate my navel. I like
Mhm,
to think about the universe. I like to think about limitations and how to move beyond them. You know how you
mhm,
lay on the beach sometimes and just let your mind drift. I I had some experiences when I was younger that let me know that there's so much more than what we can see. And
yes.
so my fun time is like, how do I disappear from my habits and my limited ways of thinking and find
Mhm.
myself in a whole new, more expanded being. Think
Mm,
about that all the time.
yeah. I like when you say your expanded way of being because I think that sometimes people only think of themselves as this one aspect, but I have come to know that we are multi layered, multifaceted individuals. And that leads me to asking you a question that may seem complex, but you can answer it in any way that you like. Who is Tina Lifford?
Oh, that's a fantastic question, Alethea.
Mm.
So I am the idea of something greater than me
Mm.
living in the convention of a body rooted to a universal consciousness.
Mm. Mm.
I'm going to say it again. I am an idea in the mind of universal consciousness,
Mhm.
given the gift of form, this body, and operating from the body, but rooted to something greater.
Mm.
That's who I am.
So then a person could ask, well, does that something greater mean it's a physical God, or is it energy, or is it spirit? How would you respond to that?
I would say that there is clearly and undeniably an intelligence that backs this entire world,
Mhm,
and I can't even say world as we know it. I can say as we know it,
mhm,
because what we know about it is minuscule compared to what it is. And so the intelligence that allows this to operate as it does with such
Mhm.
precision, such intentionality. That is what I'm speaking of and to.
Indeed.
And I will tell you that science says, and I'm not a person who emphasizes science as though the it's the be all or the bottom line, because science is a work in progress.
Yes.
Science is only as scientific as the minds that have been able to contemplate or understand up until now. That's
Mhm.
why when we started with Newtonian science, we didn't know anything about quantum science or
Mhm.
quantum physics. So we're all in this state
Mhm.
of expanding into and understanding infinitely,
Yes. Yes.
because what we are in is an infinite consciousness or intelligence or being, however you want to call it. And I would say, Alethea, that one of my growing superpowers is that I trust
Hmm.
that I am connected to a high intelligence,
Mhm.
which leaves me free to challenge the limiting ideas about who I am and what is so and what is right.
Wow. And those limiting ideas. Now, I want to start to dig a little bit deeper here because I know what that means because I'm a part of a huge portion of the work you do based on what I've learned from you. But let's let's break this down even more. You have been on a mission practically for over 4 decades, Tina, to make something called inner fitness as understood and actionable as physical fitness. I think in our society, physical fitness and working out and looking great has been emphasized, which is good. However, inner fitness is a true game changer. And so, tell us briefly what exactly is inner fitness?
Mm.
And then, when was the moment that made you realize that this work about inner fitness actually needed to be a revolution?
Yeah, great question. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, inner fitness it's the inverse of physical fitness, where we strengthen the body, we
Mhm.
exercise and strengthen the body. Inner fitness exercises and strengthens the inner self, our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, which drives our actions and reactions. And inner fitness is, it talks about having a mental and emotional resilience. It talks about having self-agency, and
Mhm.
it talks about being self-aware, which is an ongoing process.
Mhm.
Um, Inner fitness, and I so love how you set it up. We have been taught to externalize our sense of self. It's our sense of self starts out there with the people we know or
Mhm.
the external achievements or accomplishments or the success, the money, the fame, the whatever. We get identified by that stuff. Inner fitness is shifting the conversation from the external to the internal.
Mhm.
It acknowledges that all of those external things exist and have their place and are important. But what inner fitness does it actually acknowledges that before there's all of that stuff, there is an inner self, and that that inner self drives all of that stuff out there.
Mhm.
That inner self is our thoughts, our feelings, and our beliefs, and how they run through our body. And if we don't have an understanding and a empowering understanding of ourselves, we wind up living lives that default to worry, doubt, fear, and survival instincts.
Mhm.
But the truth is, when we pay attention and become aware of who we are inside, as you said at the very beginning, we discover that there's this multi-layered, very expansive being within us. And we get to learn that within that range, we have a surviving self, a thriving self, and the part of us that knows and leans into its connection to this
Yes.
infinite field. And that's what
Mhm.
science calls it, this underlying field that connects everything.
Mhm. And you had a book that was very highly successful, The Little Book of Big Lies. But in terms of inner fitness, that's an entire community, it's a project, it's so much more. But what led you, Tina, to really saying, I want to take this concept of inner fitness greater and I want to revolutionize it? When did
Yeah,
that aha come to you?
yeah, yeah. Fantastic question.
Mhm.
Um, so the impulse has been with me for, gosh, I would say that some version of this impulse has been in me as early as my teens. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I say that, and I think it's important to say, because I am very grateful that there was a part of me
Mhm.
that was connected enough to something inside that I could listen. You know,
Mhm.
we all have little urges. We
Yes.
all have desires or little visions about who we want to become or what we want to do.
Mhm.
And mine had to do with acting. And why did I want to act? Because I wanted to tell people stories, right? And then wanting to tell people stories also meant wanting to really understand people so that I could tell their stories.
Mhm.
And that morphed into really wanting to understand myself. And in the fifth grade, I share in both my books that in the fifth grade, I had signed up for a talent show. And I mean, people knew me at school, but I didn't consider myself a popular person,
Ah,
right?
okay. Yeah.
But I would, I, I was in the space,
Yeah.
I showed up. So
Uh-huh.
in acting class, I showed up. I showed
Yes,
up wherever I was,
exactly.
right? And on the day of the talent show, I was in gym class when they handed out the roster for that afternoon's show.
Mhm.
And for the first time, I knew what the order was. And when I looked at that piece of paper and saw that my name was first on the list, I went, "Ah," with fear. And unbeknownst to me, that was fear. And because I didn't know it was fear, and because I didn't know how to release it, that fear got stuck inside of me.
Mhm.
And so for hours between gym class and when I actually stepped on the stage, there was these pieces of me that were worried about the experience, that were in some level of worry, doubt, and fear without me even really being conscious of it.
Hmm.
Right? There was just a, oh, me.
Yeah.
I just, if I wanted to go second or, third or whatever, right? So by time I stepped on the stage, Alethea, I didn't know it, but I was in full blown fear. So I started to sing Old Man River. I got out, Old Man River,
Mm.
never said another word,
Mm.
literally frozen. Frozen to the point that everything was black. Yes, we were in an auditorium and the lights were down, but everything was black except for this beaming white light that was, the spotlight.
The spotlight. Yeah. Hmm.
And I was so frozen that I could hear the pianist trying to help me. And ultimately, my teacher had to come to center stage, pick
Mm.
me up, and take me off, to the wings. And I knew in the second grade that I wanted to be an actress. And so here I am with this experience and all of this un unrecognized stuck energy, stuck
Hmm.
fear inside of me. And what we know about the body today is that fear or all emotions
Hmm.
have a chemical equivalent. And all emotions, if they are working properly, they come in, they do their job of alerting us or, expanding us or healing us. And then they get excreted. Those
Hmm.
chemicals get excreted. But when it comes to trauma or unprocessed chemicals, those chemicals lay dormant in our body, in our consciousness, in
Hmm.
our sense of self. And so I didn't know that I had been traumatized,
Yeah.
but years later, in the midst of forging my career, in the midst of being successful, I had one moment that triggered that fifth grade moment. And when it triggered the fifth grade moment, I literally went through more than a decade, probably two decades, being in a struggle with regulation or having
Hmm.
self-agency when it came to auditions.
Mm.
And I could always will myself through it. I could get through it and I could keep booking jobs, but it was will, which means that that fear that was already stuck inside
Hmm.
was only getting more and more suck, more
Yeah.
and more energy was being funneled into it because
Hmm.
everything that I was doing from fear. I was
Yeah.
doing from white knuckles. I was doing in a from the energy of
Hmm.
survival.
Oh, I'm just sitting here processing all of that in that I think about even times in my life and for the for the premises of the podcast, I will say we and our, but
Yes, 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 yes. Mhm.
it's kind of a inside thing that in the inner fitness community, we take ownership for everything. So we use I language. But what I'd like to say is just the envisioning, even when you describe it, of you standing in that spotlight and just being frozen, it makes me think of how many of us on a day to day basis or at some point in our life
Yeah,
stay stuck and frozen and paralyzed when we
yeah,
already have what's inside of us and the capability of doing it. And so, in terms of certain roadblocks and confronting barriers within ourselves, is that you've spoken about, written about how we can sometimes disconnect from ourselves in terms of self judgment, giving ourselves away to others. Sometimes we get into that whole comparison trap. But what is one way, especially as you've written this book and your research and just with your experiences of working with so many people as well as yourself? Tino, what is a way that people can unconsciously block their own well being and how can they shift out of it?
yeah. Beautiful question. The blocking part is we take one moment in our lives
Mm-hmm.
and we turn it into a mountain. We turn it into who we are. We ruminate on it. We replay it. We hate it.
Mm-hmm.
We try to avoid it. We run from it. We let it tell us we are broken. That one moment, my experience on that stage was probably, less than 3 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
5 at the most. And it it has used decades of my life. Now I'm going to get back to that at the end because
Mm-hmm.
now I'm grateful for that, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right? So that's how we get there. We get to this frozen, disconnected place because we take one moment and we give it so much energy to live,
Mm.
so much attention, time, heart, all of that. And we make it, we help it literally breathe. And we do that, which is why the revolution is so important.
Mm-hmm.
We do that out of ignorance. We do that because that's how our nervous system has been wired. If you think about us, not just in terms of, who you see in the mirror now, but we have within us the journey of evolution. The entire journey of
Mm-hmm.
evolution is encoded in our DNA. And within that journey, long before we became human beings, life had to be super smart.
Mm-hmm.
And in being super smart, life had to look for danger and avert it, avoid it. And one of the ways that fight, fight, or freeze that they talk about, that wound up being a way that all organisms developed their ability to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So you can either fight your way out of it, you can freeze and go unseen and hope that your enemy doesn't see you and attack you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Fight, or you can run.
That's right.
You can run. And this is the first time that I've thought about this, but literally, fight, flight, or freeze is not just what we have learned to do from this evolutionary perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but it's what we are doing inside with ourselves where those traumas are concerned.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
We are fighting them,
Mm-hmm.
we are running from them,
Mm.
and they are, and when we can't take it anymore, we literally are paralyzed.
Yeah.
I had never
Wow.
thought about that before, right?
Yeah, and that is a revelation even to me because there are certain things, even though I've done and I'm doing the work and the practices, I'm even thinking about certain things I'm freezing on that I need to just move past. And the only reason is me. And it's
Yeah,
from that fear, living in that surviving self. And it's
yeah.
the fear of what if this actually turns out to be really good? And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I gotta stop doing that. But it makes me really, really think. And so when you were going through this process of writing the inner fitness revolution, suppose someone, because a lot of readers, this is going to be their first time even encountering this work. What do you want people to get the most out of from this book?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. Because the, our default to survival
Mm-hmm.
is so ingrained that we call it normal. We
Yeah.
we don't even know that it's what we're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so normal. It's normalized. It's the only thing that we've known. Heck, it's what our ancestors did,
Yeah.
right?
That's true.
It's what life was doing to survive before it became, it adapted and went down the branch of, humanness.
Humanist. Uh-huh.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that means we live with a very narrow idea of self. And the inner fitness revolution expands our idea of self so that it includes all of the power that comes from the thriving and the infinite range in us.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to convince you of this power.
Mm-hmm.
There's evidence of it everywhere. Every social movement on the planet
Mm.
that that is driven by a small number of people in comparison,
Mm-hmm.
it was able to root itself and gain traction. Why? Because the thriving part of us,
Mm-hmm.
the infinite part of us, the thriving part, if worry, doubt, and fear sort of gives us context for the surviving self, then hope, possibility, and a sense of a future,
Mm.
sense of being, of having meaning, allows us to confront those more limited ideas of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that the revolution is doing is it's expanding our sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
You are more than your worry, doubt, and fear. You are more than the bills. You are more than the negativity
Mm-hmm.
that courses through your mind and tries to define you. You are more. That is the smallest part of you, but it is the most practiced.
Yes.
And
And with you saying this word practiced, I wanted to bring that up. I said earlier, I have and I am practicing, and you use this term practiced. And throughout the book, you talk about the practices for inner health and well-being. And there are 14 practices. I don't want you to share all of those practices because we're going to tell you how to buy this book, how to support it, and how to get it. But let's shift briefly and talk about the importance of being practiced. And I say that, Tina, because there's a quote I love, and it says, "Don't judge my story based on the chapter you walked in on." Meaning that sometimes people can see a person and think they have it all together and oh my goodness, they're so this and that without really knowing the cost of what
Yeah,
it took to get there
yeah,
and what it still takes to actually get there. So when we talk about practicing the practices and really focusing on our inner health and well-being, what does it take for a person to even begin their journey of inner fitness toward being practiced so that they are aware of themselves even more?
yeah, beautiful. So, one of the things that um, is our goal at the Inner Fitness Project is to make this stuff understandable, practical, and actionable. So I
Mhm.
try to keep it really simple. And my simple answer is anytime you feel some kind of way less than wonderful,
Mhm.
less than magical, less than being important. Anytime the simplest little thought tries to crawl up out of crawl up into your head and into your heart, just say, I am more than this.
Mhm.
I am more than this. Because we have to remind ourselves that there's more to us than this habit of surviving.
Yes.
So we just say, I'm more than this. I'm more than this. And every single time you say, I'm more than this, if you pay attention, you will feel something in your heart that feels like a yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
I am more than this. Yes,
Yeah.
you are. I'm more than this. Yeah, say it again. I am more than
Mhm.
this, right? In fact, I
Mhm.
invite your listeners to say right this moment, I am more than this. And experience for yourself the subtle expansion or hope or yes that you feel in your body.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then because we are we are now saying you are more than this. Now we want to give you a strategy for connecting to the more that you are,
Mhm.
right? So if you are more than this, then what are you? And if you're more than this and saying I'm more than this feels good, how do we keep that good feeling going and expand it? And so the Inner Fitness Project has lots of prompts, tools,
Mhm.
practices, actions, workshops, etc. But the 14 practices that you mentioned, which are at the core of the book, The Inner Fitness Revolution,
Mhm.
each one of those practices ultimately connects you to the idea that you are more,
It certainly does.
you know?
Mhm.
And
Yes.
that's the whole point.
Mhm.
If you go to a gym, you do the same exercises over and over and over again, and you don't really tire of them
Mhm.
because they are doing their job. Those exercises are helping you have that muscle strength that you want, that endurance that you want, that stamina that you want, that physique that you want.
Yes.
And so the repetition becomes a gift. The repetition is the celebration, right? I'm going to go do my reps today
Mhm.
because my reps are giving me that experience that I most want. which is the experience of my physical form in these ways that I, value. And
Mhm.
so we are doing the same thing at Inner Fitness. Truth is truth, and it doesn't jump around. And if the truth is that you are more, and that feeling in and of itself,
Mhm.
amplified, actually creates more space inside of you for healing,
Mhm.
more space inside of you for understanding yourself and having love and compassion for yourself. If the feeling that goes with I am more has all of that power in it, then we want to practice
Mhm.
these practices as often as necessary to to grow that experience and keep it expanding.
Indeed. And the more that you practice them, they become a way of living, a way of being. They just happen without even really thinking about them. And I can say this, you all, and this is not Tina at all. This is all me. Nowadays in 2025, from what I've seen, we hear all of these people and experts saying, know your worth and love yourself. That's great. That's absolutely wonderful with the work they're doing. But the point I want you all to really understand, Tina was doing this work even before it became trendy.
Mhm.
And there is something to it where I can say personally, although I grew up in the church, I love God, all of that. This is no disrespect and not taking away from anything. What makes this interview so special is because I am a part of this community.
Mhm.
And I know firsthand that these principles and practices Tina writes in her book work if you practice them and you apply them. Ever since I joined Inner Fitness, my life has transformed exponentially. And it's no hocus pocus, it's no quick fix. No, I had to come true to myself and who I am. And so, this question for you, Tina, is if you could put into your own words for someone who reads the Inner Fitness Revolution, applies the practices, and begins to transform, how could life look different for them on the
Mhm.
other side?
Oh, but that's a beautiful, beautiful question. And um, a sense of self
Mm.
that knows you're worthy, a sense of self that empowers your right to show up as your authentic self.
Hmm.
So you don't have to dance and juggle and do whatever is necessary to be acceptable to the world out there.
Hmm.
You begin to understand that being yourself is you fulfilling the purpose of you, and then leaning into the idea that you have innate purpose and worth.
Mm.
It's being able to have self-agency to say, this is who I am, this is what I want.
Hmm.
To have the resilience, the ability to encounter life, lifing, and to not take it personally, ever,
Ooh. Ooh.
ever,
That's big.
ever.
That's big.
To meet up with people whose agendas are nefarious,
Hmm.
whose whose intentions are um, devilish, and to feel like you have a personal power and connection that gives you the strength necessary to not just be in that space,
Mhm.
but to be in that space and to let it grow you into more of your power.
Mhm. Mm.
Inner fitness, I had a conversation with someone earlier before this call, and they were dealing with a difficult marriage. And she said something like, I'm having a lot of difficulty managing my marriage. And I said to her, what if you started managing your joy?
Mm. Mm.
What if you sat down with a piece of paper and you identified what kind of marriage would make you joyful?
Mhm.
What are you doing and who are you being in the marriage? How are the two of you communicating? What happens when you find yourself, at a crossroads or a conflict in your, imagined scenario, your best possible imagined scenario? What happens when you find yourself in these very natural and human circumstances with your mate?
Yes.
Get clear about that, and then use your voice and your intention and work with your partner to create the joy that you both want.
That's right.
And if he's not interested or she's not interested in being in a joyous relationship where each person gets to show up as they are, and you all don't expect perfection from one another, you just
Mhm.
seek the freedom and self agency and self love to be able to show up in the moment
Mhm.
and speak to your needs or communicate and resolve, at least in the sharing,
Mhm.
you feel heard and seen and safe. So inner fitness gives you a connection to yourself that allows you to dare to be more joyous,
Mm.
be more free, to be as connected to the world
That's right.
as the world allows you to be.
Mhm.
Some people aren't going to want to have you have a voice,
Mhm.
and you get to make a choice about that. But when you have a vision about what freedom and joy are for you, then you can bring that vision, and you have
Mhm.
self-agency. You
Yeah.
bring that vision with you. You talk about that vision with others. You share yourself freely, courageously.
That's right. Yeah. It's so empowering. It is empowering work because I know that for me, the empowerment piece came that I don't have to sit around and wait for anybody else. I can do this on my own. It's my life. And I
Absolutely.
think that sometimes I have encountered others who wait around for change to happen
Yes.
and don't realize the magnitude of the power that they have to truly transform themselves.
They don't realize that they are the change.
Yes.
we,
Yes.
we can't
Yeah.
get, the only way we can get over there
Mm-hmm.
is by us moving ourselves
Mm-hmm.
there.
No matter what's happening to us,
That's,
around us,
that's right.
whatever, that is what is so empowering. And we're about to wrap up soon. I just have a couple of more questions, but let's just take a pause here to say, okay, the book's coming out, I want to say March 11th. Correct
That's
me if I'm
correct.
right. March
That's correct.
11th. How can people pre-order the book and place orders? Could you give us that information, please?
Yeah.
Mm,
So, you can pre-order the book
mhm.
at any bookseller. So, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, book,
Anywhere, yeah.
yeah, anywhere. Okay. If you go to our website, which is theinnerfitnessproject.com,
Yes, and I'll put the
and
links.
okay,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
hit book, then you can pre-order through our page, and you will also get a 7 card deck called The 7 Laws of Self.
mhm,
And the 7 Laws of Self is just one of the tools in this book
mhm,
that help you to understand the relationship with yourself that you are aiming for, right?
mhm.
It helps you stay in alignment with honoring and elevating yourself. And yeah, so that's
Yeah,
how you, and
okay.
I do encourage you to pre-order, because those 7 cards, um you can download them onto your computer
Mhm.
and just randomly say, okay, so which of the laws am I going to walk with
Yes.
today, and pull a card, and there you have
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And let me also say, you all, to anyone listening be or watching, because I have male and female subscribers, and just people in general who are going to be new to this show or inner fitness. This work is genderless. Okay? It
absolutely
is not based on if you're a
ageless, genderless.
ageless, genderless, raceless, socioeconomic, everything, right? Meaning that as long as you are a human being breathing and living in this existence, inner fitness is for you. Okay? And I say that with the most respect. Do not think that, oh, this is just women's work, or this is no. This is a human work that we are doing. And Tina, if someone right now listening or watching this in this moment, they're hearing this and say, this sounds great and all, but I'm stuck, I'm broken, I'm uncertain as to where to even begin. I want to get your book, I will, but I don't think this is going to work. What is one thing that they can do today, even before reading the book, in order to start their own journey toward inner fitness?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Um, I'm going to offer 2 things.
Mm,
One I've already offered. Just say to yourself, I'm more than this. And you might not feel, if you've been stuck for a long time, you might not feel that you are more than this. But one of our favorite prompts is up until now, and from
mhm,
this point forward. And I guarantee you that if you take this sentence, up until now, I have felt stuck, or I have been stuck. But from this point forward, that can change for the better. If you take whatever your sticking point is, wherever your doubt is, whatever your hurt is,
mhm,
and you insert it into up until now, this thing, and you insert your thing, but from this point forward, it can change for the better. You will feel the truth of that statement. There will be a part of your body, your spirit, that awakens. It Look for it.
mhm,
You will feel it. It'll be an impulse. It'll be a little elevation.
mhm,
And that says that you have just told yourself the truth. And if that truth can make its way into your stuck space and you can feel a tiny bit of elevation, imagine what would happen in an environment that is completely and utterly focused on supporting people in having more and more of those elevated experiences based upon the truth about the power that lives inside of them.
That's right.
And you said, Alethea, you said that this is genderless and
Mhm.
ageless and raceless. And bottom line is just think about physical fitness.
Yeah.
There
There you
are no
go.
there are no
Yes, that's right.
limits. There are no limits to who physical fitness is for.
Hmm.
And there's no limits to who an awakened sense of self is for. A strengthened sense of self is for.
Mm. Closing question.
I love your questions, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just always
They're so good.
thinking this is a beautiful conversation. The closing question for you, Tina, is what is one because there's many, but what is one of the greatest ways that inner fitness, although you created it, founded it, etc., what is one of the greatest ways inner fitness has transformed your life?
Oh, it transforms my life daily
Mm,
and almost moment to moment because I followed this thing, this desire to expand out of my own
mm,
challenges. I prioritized trying to figure that out long before we had the benefits of neuroscience to the degree that we do now.
mhm,
I put in enormous effort. And in the coming book, I use effort as an acronym, and it's extracting freedom from our restricted thinking.
mhm,
So when I see all these people in the community loving themselves, not putting me on a pedestal, because that's not the kind of community the
that's
Interfaith
right.
Project is.
Mhm,
It is built so that each person can discover themselves, their own purposefulness and innate value, and flower, literally, expand into who they are.
mm,
And every single time I see someone in the community move from a restricted space into a more expanded space, and then again into a more expanded space, and again into a more expanded, I feel, I, I feel honored,
mm.
but I also am grateful that I had the stamina to do the work to get us here.
And I too am so glad that you did. It has truly changed my life, and it has been an honor having you today. And I'm so glad that that little girl who froze on stage did not freeze in life, but rather chose to continue to move forward and not just to shift her world, but to shift, expand, and change the lives of so many others. Tina Lifford, or Miss Tina, as I affectionately call you. It has been an honor having you on the Power Transformation Podcast. And please, you all, The Inner Fitness Revolution, released March 11, 2025. You have time to get it. pre order, and get more than one copy. But thank you again for being on our show today. It has been truly my pleasure.
It has been my pleasure, Alethea. Thank you so much for having me.